Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Govin here with secretsoflongevity.com. There's a lot of different comments and questions I get on my channel every day, but some of the most common ones I get are on herbs, and specifically on my videos about herbs, which I have quite a few at this point. And I wanted to address just some of the main ones so I can just link people to this video and not have to go over it every single time one of these questions is asked or one of these comments is made. So the first and definitely the most common one is, how are we supposed to be taking these herbs? Or it's, different things around this topic, so different questions. And it's often, should I be buying the powder or the whole herb on Mountain Rose herbs? Why is the extract on Hyperion herbs so much more expensive than buying the herb whole? There's a whole bunch of things around this. So I'm just going to broadly go over the four sort of ways of taking herbs that are most common and that get confused amongst each other, and just clear it up so that answers the questions for people. So the first part of that is that on Mountain Rose herbs, if I've got a link to one of the pages with some sort of herb, I am always recommending people go for the whole herb, not the whole herb that's been powdered down. So I mean coarse cut. So if you look at, say nettle leaf, just like green tea, it's in the leaf that's been dried and sort of crinkled up into little bits. It's big enough that if you were to pour hot water over it in a cup, you could drink it with that stuff settling down. If it was a powder, that stuff would be floating around in the tea by the time you went around to drinking it. And that's not desirable. You're going to be, getting that grit in your throat. Even if you had something that you strained it through, unless you're talking about fine paper, like a coffee filter, you're going to be getting this particulate in it. So it's a real hassle if you buy the whole herb powdered, because you're still having to extract it because it's like the coarse cut, and then it doesn't get sifted out as easily. So a lot of people think that because they're buying a powder, they can just throw it in a smoothie and eat it. That might be the case with powdered goji berries or generally powdered fruits. Sometimes powdered roots you can, like maca root. But if we're talking about most roots like he shou wu and these other herbs, usually ginseng, you want to cook and make a tea out of it. You want to get it in a chunkier form so that it can be processed, whether it's making a tincture out of it, whether it's making a tea, and you want to then dispose of what's left over, because this is a lot of the fiber. There's not going to be much of the medicinal effects left at all. You're trying to get the essence of the herb. That's the whole idea of herbalism, is you're getting the essence of a plant without all the burdensome aspects of it, which we don't really need and can't really use the nutrition from because it's mostly just indigestible fiber. So with that being said, again, looking at that idea of the powder versus the whole herb, this does confuse people because I also recommend stuff on Brain Insight, which is a powder, but it's an extract. So the difference between a whole herb that's just been turned into a powder and an extract is that you take the whole herb, you make a tea out of it, whether it is already made from the powder or the whole herb. You take that tea, which is the essence, what you're trying to get, you dry that down, and you're left with a powder that's extremely concentrated. So a teaspoon or half a teaspoon of the extract from Hyperion herbs or from any other place that sells extracts is many times more dense in terms of its effects than the powdered herb without it being processed from something like Mountain Rose herbs. The only reason Mountain Rose herbs has that is there are certain preparations you might want to use a powder for. I'm not going to get into those. And it's unfortunate they don't kind of clearly label that, because I do get a lot of questions from people who've already bought it in this form and are wondering what to do with it. And my advice is just, you're going to have to make the tea and put it through a coffee filter if you don't want to waste it. The other major downside of buying herbs in powdered form, not talking about the extract, but the powdered whole herb, is it's going to go bad like 3 to 5, maybe even more times as fast as the chunkier forms of the herb. So if you had nettle leaf in its dried form, it could last, if it's stored in an airtight, cool, dark environment, you're looking at several years it can be stored. It's obviously going to lose its freshness over time, so within the first year it's ideal. But with the powdered herb, within a few months, you're going to notice a very drastic difference. It might even start to fade and not look as vibrant anymore. Extracts, it's kind of the same thing. You want to use those up quicker, so it's not advisable to buy, like a gallon of it at once unless you are serving a lot of people or you're just really enthusiastic about a certain tonic herb. But then the other way that people are consuming extracts is in capsule form. So another question I get is should we be taking this in capsule form on my videos? Because what I'm talking about is taking in an extract. yes, by all means, it's the same thing you're taking. It's just coming in a capsule. So it's the same dosage if you're doing the right ratio from dosage to dosage. And basically they've taken that extract and just capsulated it. So you pay a bit extra for capsule because it's going through a process, and sometimes there's undesirable things added to help those things get into the capsules, binders and flowing agents and things like that. So there's a downside of that. You're looking at more cost for less of the product, which is why I generally recommend the extracts. People want to save money, and it's easy to add to drinks, it's easy to use. But if you have an issue with compliance, then yes, definitely go for capsules. Brandon on Hyperion Herbs has many of those herbs available in capsules. And a lot of these things I'm talking about, you can find in the links below if you want to check out Hyperion Herbs or Mountain Rosa Herbs. And hopefully you can understand the difference at this point of extracts to whole herbs. The second of the 5 most often asked questions or comments or whole topics is, what brand do I recommend of any type of herb? So I often get questions like, do you recommend Random, Nature's Path? I don't even know if that's a real brand or not. That sounds probably like a granola bar company. But do you recommend this brand of Hoshiwu or Foti or Schizandra berries or whatever herb it is? And I talk about certain brands in the videos. That's what I'm recommending because I know these people often. I know and use those products. I've used a fair amount of products from different companies, but I don't consider myself quality control in the herbal realm and whole industry. So of course there's going to be tons of companies I've never tried before. Generally, when you're looking at other companies, you just look at the price margin. Unless there's a really not well-established company that's really trying to rip people off, usually a higher price margin means higher quality. You look at Dragon Herbs, they look a little expensive at times, depending on what it is that you're looking at, but they have one of the highest quality standards in the industry. You compare Dragon Herbs or Hyperion Herbs or Jing Herbs, any of their products to an equivalent product from something like Now Foods or whatever that company is with the orange label. You might have seen it in health food stores. Not trying to bash them, but there is definitely going to be a difference in terms of quality. If you're paying less than $15 for 60 capsules of Hoshiwu, there's probably a reason you're paying less than $15. Another really common question is dose. I often don't go over specifics of dose because it's usually found on the label, and the companies do different strength of extracts. They do different amounts of milligrams of different things in capsules, and they put the dosage on the bottles and packages for you to follow. If you're buying the whole herb, yes, you need to know the dosage, and I've talked about this in this video here in the past. I'll link to it again because I just don't go over it on every single video because there's a lot to explain. And there is a general rule for herbs when you're making tea or a tincture, which I talk about in that video. It's essentially depending on the herb. Most herbs, you're looking at a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons per liter of water simmering it for however long that herb needs to simmer for. And then depending on the type of herb, whether it's a root, a stem, a bark, a fruit, a leaf, they're going to need different times in terms of their water extraction process. Or if it's an alcoholic tincturing process, then that's pretty standard. And again, I cover that in this video. There's going to be a few key herbs that are outside of that framework. So if you're not keen on actually investigating in this in yourself on your own and getting a good book on basics of herbalism or tonic herbalism to learn what herbs do have different dosages, you should probably just stick to capsules and extracts and things that have directions on them, just so that you don't overdo something. Most tonic herbs you can't overdo, but if you're getting into the realm of echinacea or anything that's not something that you can take daily for long periods of time, or the dosage is very specific, then you want to be more cautious around that. So item number 4, which is very common, this is more of a comment, sort of a criticism, someone trying to put down what it is I'm doing in the video, and it's usually along the lines of, I did what you said, I took this herb for this purpose that you're describing in the video, and it did nothing for me. So these usually happen on videos where I'm recommending a whole multitude of different approaches to tackle one issue, whether it's like hair loss or graying of the hair or healthier skin. And this person's trying to say everything I'm saying in the video is wrong because their one experience with some health food store crap herb Maybe it was a better quality one, I don't know. But they've had this one experience with this herb for however long. They probably didn't even do it for 2 weeks, which is the general thing that people run into. They take something and expect miracle results right away, and they don't stick with it in the long haul. And to that I say, well, if you actually paid attention to the video, you'd have known that this is about a whole lifestyle plan. I'm not recommending this one herb, even though that might be one of the major components to it, or I'm really enthusiastic about that herb for this approach. So you have to take that into account. You also have to take into account, I don't know what extract you've taken, I don't know what herb you're taking, I don't know your unique constitution. If you haven't been working with herbalists, you really have no right in saying that X herb does not work for anyone because it didn't work for you. You need to get better educated around herbs. You need to work with a practitioner that knows this stuff better than you. And if something just simply did not work for you, just move on. You don't need to try and warn others because something didn't happen to work for you and you're afraid of other people getting results from it. And the fifth one, which is another comment, a criticism, a negative sort of mindset, as these last two are, is that all herbs are poisonous. And to that I say, every food is poisonous. Everything in our lives has a negative side to it when done in the wrong way. You look at any vegetable and its wild counterpart, because all vegetables originated from wild plants, usually not the ones in their current form, unless you're looking at something like dandelion leaf, which is now sold in a lot of grocery stores. But there's poisonous compounds in all greens, extremely minute quantities of them. Certain herbs, the poisons are more pronounced, and so they have a stronger effect on the body, and they need more caution and specifics on dosage because a small amount of poison can be a cure. If you're commenting on one of these videos, I've seen it everywhere, and you have no background in herbalism, again, you have no right trying to give your opinion on this when you don't understand how these things work. Poisons act almost the way exercise does. You do something, it breaks down the muscle or puts a bit of stress on the cardiovascular system or an organ in our body even, and then you stop, you recuperate, and that thing grows back stronger, whatever had a bit of stress put on it. So an herb, which generally they affect the organs more, it puts a bit of stress on it through whatever poison, and that organ bounces back when you stop a small regimen of it for a week to 2 weeks, or that's why a lot of these herbs you want to cycle. When you're talking about tonic herbs, they have next to no poisons, just like most of our food, and they can be taken daily for long periods of time. Yes, if you took 2 pounds of hushaboo a day, you'd run into problems, just like if you drank a liter of wheatgrass juice every day, you're going to run into problems. That's why wheatgrass juice is only recommended in 2-ounce shots on an empty stomach. So anything has its negative effect when overdone. And what we need is more intelligence around what it is we're consuming and its effect on us. So poisons are not in and of themselves inherently bad. It's when they're taken in dosage in excess of what's safe for our body. A lot of people, when they hear the term poison, they think, obviously, windshield washer fluid. You don't want to drink that. That makes sense. It's an industrial chemical. There's no applications for it for our own health. But that's not the same type of poison when you look at dandelion leaf or the slight poisons that are in certain seeds that when we consume those, they might have an anti-cancerous effect. But if you were to overdose on them, they would have an anti-human life effect. So yeah, just be smart about it and don't make these blanket statements. Don't come from this puritanical, old, misguided sort of natural hygiene mentality, which has long since been debunked and gone with the wind, so to speak. So with that, I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Check out the links below for some of the companies I recommended if you want to purchase through those affiliates and continue to support my work here on YouTube. And I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.